This is Tanner. He's 19 years old and he made $30,000 in the last 2 weeks. He built his entire business by running ads for roofing companies.
We saw a huge opportunity and we decided we wanted to sell it.
What's even crazier is that he became an entrepreneur at 10 years old.
When we were 10, we were offering free trials for free lemonade.
And as a teenager, he hit $10,000 per month with no employees. Were you like on your own?
Yeah, I was a solopreneur before I hit 10K a month.
He talked about why he's not going to go to college. What'd you tell him?
I told my parents I planned on taking a gap year, but I never actually intended on going to college.
This video will show you exactly what steps you need to take as a teenager to hit 10K per month. Let's dive in. All right, guys, we've got the legend Tanner Lewis in the house. Tanner, why don't we start off by you sharing how old you are? What's the most amount of money that your business has made you in a single month? And are you going to college or not?
Yeah, so I'm 19. The most we've made in a month so far has been around $30,000 in a single month. And I'm not planning on going to college. So no, it's been going pretty well.
Cool. So 30K a month. And what's the business model?
So at the moment, so we started off roofing marketing agency. We did a heavy focus on TikTok. We do a lot of stuff with Facebook as well. However, we did a lot of performance-based deals sort of in the beginning, you know, selling sort of prepackaged appointments with guarantees, sort of backing that up. We're shifting a little bit more now. So I would say now, like we're starting to go a lot more high ticket with our management clients. And then I'm going much more into selling more software-based services.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I definitely want to pick your brain on that. But before we go into those specifics, why don't we take a step back? Like, how did you get here? How did you like start a business? Like, you were in high school, I assume, when you first started. Like, break that entire experience down for us.
Yeah, so I think that it just sort of boiled down to, so like I played a lot of soccer in high school. It was a big focus of my life for a very long time. But I kind of had this realization my junior year of high school where I just kind of didn't see the point in going and playing in college. Like, it would have been a good experience and I probably would have learned a lot doing it, but I just kind of looked at it and it's like, okay, what's the point? Because I'm going to be spending all of this time to play college athletics when I could be taking that time and doing something else that, in my opinion, probably would have been more productive and actually gotten to me closer to my goal. Because I've always had a very big amount of anxiety surrounding the fact that like I don't want to be homeless basically, and I want to be financially set. So that's I just kind of had this moment my junior year where I just kind of took a look at myself and I was like, you know, I think I'd rather go a different direction. And I had always kind of been in entrepreneurship for a little bit of time. So like when I was 10 years old, me and my friend, like we did like a chain of lemonade stands around our neighborhood.
A chain?
Yeah, like a little chain.
What do you mean?
Like we'd have different locations in different spots in the neighborhood where like cars would drive by.
It's got a franchise.
Yeah, no, and we did it. And we did some not the best tactics sometimes to get people in the door. It would be like
how?
Like free lemonade for like your first cup, but then we like charged them like 50 cents afterwards.
Really?
And stuff like that. Yeah, but it was good lemonade.
Yeah, that's
so.
an irresistible offer.
Exactly.
Get them
yeah.
in the door. It's the free model.
Yeah, for sure. And then like when I was in I think it was like 8th or 7th grade, we had this like school store at the school that I went to, and they would sell these Pop-Tarts, and it was like, I think they were selling it for like $2 a pack for like 2 of the Pop-Tarts. But I saw there's like this local like CVS deal going on at like the local store, because like we'd get picked up from a CVS for the bus. And there was like a deal where it's like you get 2 full boxes for like $4. So then me and this other kid, we would literally just go to school and just sell the Pop-Tarts at recess. And I think we did like $100 in a month from it.
So you arbitraged Pop-Tarts.
Basically, yeah.
Damn, that's like a top secret side hustle.
Yeah,
know?
For sure.
Did you scale that business?
No, not very scalable, unfortunately. But yeah, no. And then
were you like, how can I arbitrage other things? Or was it just like a one-time thing where you're like, oh, we should sell Pop-Tarts?
I just kind of saw an opportunity and I was just like, fuck it, like, why not? Like,
That's
might
cool.
as well just sell it, you know? And it did quite well. I didn't really have anything to spend the money on. So I think I just spent it on like goldfish or something. Like, I don't even know. I don't even remember at this point in time.
That's a lot of goldfish.
Probably, yeah. There's probably some other like snacks mixed in there. I don't know.
This guy bought a lot of snacks.
For sure, definitely. No question. And then, yeah, like sort of from there, I'd always sort of sold stuff online, you know, when I was in high school.
Like what?
Like different sneakers. I did a lot of stuff on eBay. Like I would like take like old school textbooks that I had and like sell them on my eBay store. I used to sell like old comic books and stuff like that. We even sold, I just like literally just whatever I could get my hands on, whatever I thought I could make a profit on, I just sell it on eBay. I mean, I didn't do a crazy amount of money, but it was good money for me at the time as a high schooler. I could go out, spend money on concerts, go to get food out with my friends.
And then how did you get into SMMA? Were you just like,
yeah,
I'm not going to play soccer?
So I think that ultimately I've always been very ambitious as far as what I've wanted to do. And I just got to the point where I kind of realized making money was kind of important to me actually. And I did want to do something successful in business. And I'd always liked thinking about it. I would say I grew up in a good environment in the sense of we knew people in business. So it wasn't out of reach, if that makes any sense. So initially it wasn't entrepreneurship. It was I want to get into commercial real estate and go that route, go the finance route basically. So I really picked up my schoolwork my junior year, my senior year, got really good grades. And that was kind of the intention that I went into my senior year with.
So you were actually planning to go to college?
Yeah. So I think I just didn't realize this whole world was out there is kind of the way I would put it. Cause I stumbled across a lot of videos fall of my senior year where it was about the online business model and
fall
the different
senior
stuff.
Year is sort of right when your senior year was starting.
Yeah. So basically right when my senior year was starting, and I had taken a commercial real estate course through MIT over the summer. So I actually kind of have a little bit of an understanding of kind of how that works. But I kind of just got to the point where I realized I kind of didn't really want to do that. It didn't really bring me a whole lot of excitement. It was just a whole lot of spreadsheets and I don't know. I just
analyzing deals.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted something that was more ideas based because I've always felt
more creative.
Yeah, creative is maybe the way I'd put it. Although I don't see myself as an artist in that same sort of way, but
no, just more strategically creative. And I'm sure you could get creative with how to add value on a commercial real estate deal, but it's more just crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Does it not?
Yeah, exactly. And then I just kind of stumbled across these videos. And I also
Which videos?
So it was a lot of Iman's videos, stuff like that. It was mostly at the time drop shipping stuff. But what I kind of started taking away from watching a lot of these videos, and this is something that I think I understood from playing sports, which is that the skills are ultimately what matters. And I kind of got into almost sort of a rabbit hole of just going down, watching different YouTube videos, looking at different types of business models. And I just kind of analyzed everything. And I just kind of got to the point where I realized I did really want to start a business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to, make money doing something that is creative in the sense of it's drawing on my intellectual capabilities. So that's kind of why I decided to go forward with the sort of entrepreneur route. And I ended up stumbling across both the dropshipping model and the agency model. And at the time, I just kind of did an analysis, literally just before school. I just remember walking to class thinking about it. I'm okay, both of these are going to work. Which one should I do? Because I kind of understood at that point, you kind of have to make it work. It doesn't matter which model you go with. So I looked at both models, and for the agency model, what really piqued my interest was the skill development. I just looked at it and I was okay, you're learning marketing, you're learning sales, you're learning management, you're learning operations, you're literally learning every little part of
how
a business.
How to grow a business.
Exactly. Yeah. So I never saw it as okay, I'm going to have my agency for the next 20 years. It was okay, I'm going to start an agency. I'm going to build the skills that I need to then eventually build something that, is in my vision, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the space. I think.
So drop shipping, you were nah.
Yeah, I felt it was just a lot of product research, running ads, that kind of thing. And I wanted something that was a little bit more sort of sales based. And because my mom, she was very successful as a salesperson herself. So I kind of knew the value of having the skill of sales. And that's something that at the time I didn't really believe that I had. So I figured that I'll not only learn the marketing side that I would have learned doing an e-commerce or a drop shipping brand, but I'll also learn sales, which, as I level up in the business world, forming strategic partnerships or, because I've always had a goal of wanting to get into private equity one day. That's people is where that's based out of. So you have to have people skills as you level up. So I figured that the agency would kind of teach me all of that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Just one day you're researching, watching YouTube videos, and then you make a decision.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say.
What happens after that?
So I think it took a couple of months for me to really fully start taking action on things senior year. I had the idea sort of set, I would say around April of 2022. However, a lot of things just sort of got in the way. I wasn't in the best like sort of mental space at the time, I would say. So it took me a little bit of time to, I would say, get rolling. But then it was funny. I was in vacation in Turkey, and I just remember you guys had an offer. It was like $500 a month to get in. And I was like, I got some money for my birthday at the time, because it was like a couple of days ago. And I was like, shit, might as well just put it in and see what happens. And
so you didn't have an agency at that point?
No, not really. I mean, I did and I didn't at the same time. Like I had started doing, like kind of not really. Like I didn't really do a whole lot of work for it at the time. I was sort of like bouncing back and forth. I kind of didn't know where to get started with it. And I don't know. I just kind of put it off, is like the way I would explain it. Like, and then I got content.
You were still in school?
During the summer.
Oh no, you had graduated.
This was like right after I graduated.
Okay, cool.
So
you graduated, you're out of high school.
Yeah.
And you're no plans to go to college.
So what I basically did, which is like looking back on it a little bit sneaky, but I basically told my parents I was doing a gap year, never intended on really doing the gap year. And then I just kind of use it as a way to like get, free rent and, just have like a sort of a ramp up period where I knew that if I had 10 months, I could get it to
12 months.
Yeah. And I just like had the mindset where I was like, if I have 10 months, I'll get the 10K at some point. And that was kind of like my thinking about it. And
okay. So you graduated, it's summer. Your family's on vacation, but you essentially say, hey, mom and dad, I'm doing a gap year. So I'm sure they were okay with it. You didn't break the news of no college just yet.
Yeah.
Gap year. And you're like, I'm going to build my agency over the next 12 months.
Yeah. So I would say like first couple of months, this is kind of where like, for me, like this was always my bottleneck, was always just like the action side of things. Like once I get rolling on something, I do very well at it. For me, it's always about just like that, taking that first step. So the first couple of months that I was really like I had gotten into Agency Lab in August, right?
So right at the end of summer.
Yeah, but I was door dashing at the time to like raise money for it, but I was making really good money through it. Like I was easily making $200 a day at some point of time. And that's really good money for, me not having to pay rent or anything like that. So I got kind of
remember you telling me like, yeah, I'm paying for ad spend with DoorDash money.
Yeah.
It's like, and you're like, yeah, I'm paying for a program with DoorDash money. And I was like, huh. You're like, no, I'm making good money.
Yeah, it was really good money, but that was kind of the problem, I would say, actually. I got very content with it. And then I just remember having a call with you. It was like a one-on-one, because I got a one-on-one with the program, but I scheduled it like way out because like my intention.
Yeah, it was one of like the bonuses. Like if you sign up, like every once in a while, I like to do that, and it gives me an opportunity to meet you guys.
Yeah, and I just remember hopping on the call, like asking like some like overcomplicated question, and then you were just like, take action, and I was just like,
I think I asked you, well, how much action have you taken? And
I was like, none.
Like, well, we could talk theory, strategy all day, but like. You have that. You're very, intellectually capable. You just got to make it real.
Yeah. That's pretty much been like the story of my entrepreneurship journey. So like basically after that point, I would say like that was definitely a turning point for me. Like not by itself.
At that point, you didn't have any clients, I remember.
Yeah. So I think it was just like always about just getting fucking rolling. And I just remember I bought the ticket to the Agency Lab event, and I think it was like a week after, or it was like very close. And I remember talking to you about that on the call, and you're like, yeah, like this is going to be life-changing for you. So I went, and that's pretty much what happened. I think the big thing for me was just kind of realizing that like it doesn't take a special type of person to start a business and be successful with it. It takes a special type of person in the sense of like you have to put a lot of commitment in and be very disciplined. But like, they're normal people, the guys at the event, if that makes any sense. And I think that was important for me to see, because I had this mindset where it's like, maybe they're just like so much smarter than me, whatever it is. So
it clicked for you. You're like, oh, they're not any better than me. They're similar to me. They're just taking more action. They're more committed. They're more all in.
Yeah.
Like maybe they're better in some ways, like, but then you're also better in other ways. Like, I think, right?
I think I was thinking of it mostly from a talent perspective, not like, and what I kind of came out realizing is like, it's all mindset. Like, that's like the difference between the guys that are making 100K a month versus 10K a month. It's all just about like having a better mindset surrounding what you're doing, but not in like a cliche way. It's like, at certain steps of the business, you kind of have
it's not mindset like woo woo. It's more like better mental frameworks, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like I just remember talking to everyone there, and like, it was just everyone was like, they had so much clarity. Like that was kind of what I got at. It was just like they understood what their purpose was. Like they understood what actions they needed to take. But most importantly, it all just stemmed from doing the thing and doing it consistently over a long period of time.
Agency Lab event, you met all these people that had a lot of clarity. And then what changed?
I think what changed for me is I just realized that it was much more attainable than I thought. I think that's kind of what it boiled down to, because I think the environment that I sort of like, the school that I went to, the environment that I grew up in was very heavily educationally based and very traditional in the sense of like, you have to do X, Y, and Z to achieve success. Like there's a set way to do it. You have to do it this way. And because my parents were pretty successful in their own right, like it's hard for me to say, oh, you're wrong, when I haven't achieved that level of success yet. But when I saw other people doing it in front of my face, I was like, well, maybe they are actually like just wrong. So I just kind of came back. Or
maybe you're
from the
both
event.
right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a little bit of element to truth in both of it. Like, I think, like, I don't think you should just drop out of and not go to college if you have no plan. Like, I think you should have a plan if you're not going to go to college, because I think a lot of, and this is just from what I've seen talking to a lot of peers my age, people that just don't know what they're going to do. Like, they're just not very clear on what they're working towards. And I think I did have that clarity. So I think when I came back from that event, I was like, well, my idea was right and I can do this. And it's not to say that my parents were wrong, but they were right in the sense of like, you have to put a lot of effort in, but it's hard to do, but it wasn't as hard as I think they were making it out to be. So I just kind of came back and I was just like, just going to go all in on it. Just like see what happens. Just started taking sales calls and then, ended up scaling and, just taking action, I think was the big thing for me. Just getting started with SMMA.
So you got back and then what happened next? Like, did you just start dialing people? Did you just like, what changed?
So I worked with,
let's get into specifics.
So I worked with Christian on cold email. So that was like the first thing that really got me going, was just like taking sales calls. I worked with him on like a pay per appointment basis and the quality was really good. And I ended up taking these calls. And I think once I started taking the calls, I realized like, one, I know I'm good at talking to people on these calls. Two, I realized this isn't as hard as I thought. Like, cause I ended up closing, I think, my first free trial client on my first call, like on my first demo call that I ever took. So
were you scared before then? Like, I know before my first clients, I was like scared to death. I'm like, the world's going to end if this doesn't work out.
Like scared to death in the sense of like, if you don't fulfill or like, if you don't make
I was
sale?
just having anxiety around the whole thing, but maybe not for you. Like, what was your thought process?
I think,
like, why did you delay for so long?
I think it was just like being content with like making the money through DoorDash. Like,
so you were comfortable.
Yeah, I was just comfortable. And I think once I realized that me being comfortable made me uncomfortable, that's kind of when I started to get out of that shell. Cause I realized like, I didn't feel good about myself at the end of the day. Like, yes, I was making money and I was like able to get the things that I wanted, but I just kind of would like have this sense of shame at the end of the day where it's just like, I don't feel good about myself. So when I went to the agency lab event and then came back, it was a complete switch. Like I flipped the switch is like the way I would kind of describe it. And I just kind of went all in on it because I've been a hard worker throughout my life for the things that I have done.
Maybe I should throw more events.
Yeah. I mean, I think the events are like a huge value add, like not even just from the information
standpoint. It's more that you just see like these people, like it's possible. I think your belief, your conviction just goes way up in yourself.
Yeah. I think it was also like an anxiety thing as well. Like I was scared to fail, I think was part of it. But then I just kind of came to the realization, like I'm failing by not doing it. So
yeah, you were already failing.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up getting into it and then I just like kind of took off from there. Like I think that, I learn a lot by doing. And
me too. I'm a kinesthetic learner.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very much that way. So I was not actually very huge on like watching courses or videos and stuff like that. I just kind of like ended up just kind of picking it up as I went along. And, I developed my offers just by talking to people on the phone, hearing what their pain points are, specifically in the roofing niche, lots of people pay for leads. And, I wanted to show my clients that not only one, like they can, trust me in a way that maybe they haven't trusted other agencies, but two, like something that's going to make me stand out from other people, which was a pay per appointment type offer. So instead of saying like, hey, like, come and I'll, you pay me a retainer, it's like, hey, you just pay me for every inspection that you get. And I found that just really hit with the people that I was serving and they really liked that offer.
You had to talk to them in order to discover that.
Yeah. I think all of my
ideas, so many people
are
are like, how do I get the perfect offer, the perfect script, the perfect sales process? And it's like, you just got to go talk to people and then you'll know what they want. And then you could reverse engineer that.
I totally agree with that. Actually, I had a conversation about this with one of my friends the other day. Like you don't actually come up with new ideas by watching other people come up with new ideas. You come up with the new ideas by just doing the thing and then it just pops up whenever you just least expect it. Like all of the ideas that I've had, I didn't go out searching for them. They just kind of came to me. Like it would be like, for example, like I was on a call with someone and for the paper appointment stuff. And I just remember someone telling me like, that would be really cool if someone would do like paper inspection versus paper lead. Like
even
Angie's
just the
assistant.
language saying inspection, like they probably have never heard that from a marketer. Every marketer saying leads and appointments. You say, oh, paper inspection. They're like, I trust this guy.
Yeah.
He gets me.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, you know, one of the things that I think I ended up really picking up with is like, I found really good ways to position my services within the space, you know, because roofing is a pretty saturated niche for lead gen agencies. Lots of people are selling leads out there for roofing contractors. And I think, you know, one of the things that I realized was like, I need to basically put myself in a blue ocean, kind of like, you know, in $100 million offers. And I think that's what I got really good at. It was just like coming up with different kind of deals that I'd get people in on. You know, I would change around the pricing a little bit, maybe change around the guarantee depending on kind of what someone would say. Like I wasn't super set in my pricing from the beginning. Now I definitely really am much more set in my pricing, but right. I think being flexible in my offers, just even on the call, like I'd come up with offers just on the fly based on what they were telling me throughout the call. And then like I'd, you know, adjust a couple of things on the slide. Like I'd pause the screen share, go back, change it. So that
you
it'd
did
be more
free trials at first.
I did free trials at first, yeah.
And then when did you switch to getting paid?
I think that what just happened is I just kept closing all, like I just go on demos, like people kept signing on with me and I just realized like I should be charging money for this. I can charge money for this. So for me, it was more about getting the confidence and conviction to begin with. And then once I got that,
I used to get so much hate for telling people to do free trials. They're like, you're undervaluing yourself. And I'm like, no, you don't understand the purpose. The purpose of the free trial is not to land clients. The purpose of the free trial is one thing and one thing only, to build conviction and belief, which then leads to what? Getting clients to pay you. Because what is the single biggest reason why people suck at sales? Lack of conviction, lack of belief, whether it's in themselves or in their product. You solve that by getting that experience. So,
no, totally agree. And then, yeah, like I just kind of ended up getting to 10K a month just by, you know, basically just selling my services. I think that sometimes people in the space overcomplicate it a little bit. That's all that it takes, in my opinion, really, at least in the space that I'm in. Maybe in another niche, it's a little bit different. But I think it does, for the most part, hold true. I think sales is what gets you to that first 6-figure mark. And don't even think of it as like, oh, you're selling your services without having earned anything. It's no, like if you want to help these people, you have to sell your services to make your other stuff better. Like you need that money to put it into systems, to put it into, you know, potential other education, whatever it may be, whatever's going to drive forward the growth. You need that cash. So I think.
So how did you get to 10K a month? Was it through cold email? Was it through paid ads?
It was through, I would say majority cold email. And then sort of the last little bit was paid ads.
Okay. And you told me you were still doing DoorDash to get money for paid ads. Like how did that work out?
So I did DoorDash I kept doing DoorDash, I think until around like early February. So the way that worked, it was not the best way to go, because what would happen is like I DoorDash the whole day, and unfortunately at the time it started really slowing down as far as like how much money I was making. Like instead of making $200 a day, I was making like 120, 140. So I'd have to go out and basically DoorDash the whole day. So what I would do is like, let's say someone scheduled a call with me, I literally just go to like a local library and take the call at the library.
No way.
Yeah. No,
Have you closed a roofer at the library?
I mean, I've closed probably multiple at the libraries. Yeah. The first one was at the
people at the library are like just listening.
Oh no, I'd get these like private study rooms. So there's this big library in DC. It's like the MLK library. I just like went there because that's like where I would DoorDash. So I'd go to the library and then I just go into like a little private office and then just take the call. And yeah, the people move forward. Yeah. So no, it was
30K a month agency. It's like, where's your office? The MLK library, you know, downtown.
Yeah. But I ended up having like some stock money that was sort of withheld from me. Let's just kind of put it that way. I don't want to get too much more into it. I ended up taking some of that money though, putting it into the agency, and then yeah, sort of the rest is history from there.
Wow. So how did you end up scaling to 30K?
I would say sales, bigger packages. I would also say choosing the right clients. Like I think one of the things that I kind of realized was like, you can get the wrong type of clients and it can hurt your business, even if they're paying you money. Because what I started to learn, I think, as I got past 10K a month was just how valuable time is as a business owner. Because when you're at that point, like I was the solopreneur, like my time was my money. So I realized like I had this one client and she was just like, you know, hitting me up all the time. Like she wasn't even letting me do my job. And I realized I was spending 80% of my fulfillment time on her versus my other clients. So I think when I made the shift, it was like, I didn't even launch ads for her. I gave her a refund before the kickoff call because she was also personally insulting me. Like I kind of like started drawing the line in the sand. And I think that's what took me to the next level was like, I want to.
Remember what we talked about earlier? The mental frameworks, mindset. It's not just like mindset, like I'm going to wake up every day and work hard. It's mindset of like, oh no, I see my self-worth. I know how to set boundaries. I know how to set good expectations. Like that's mindset. That's holding yourself in a more powerful frame. So that's just a great example of that. So I wanted to just share it with the audience so that they could see a practical example of leveling up your mindset, right?
Yeah. I will say, like, I do think that I came in, like, once I started the agency, like, mindset was something that helped me a lot because I felt like I had a pretty good mindset from the start of, like, I knew that I needed to sell. I knew what my bottlenecks were at each point in the stage. And then, so sort of where we're at now, like, now it's just about, like, operation systems, scaling. We're doing a lot with software now. We're doing more of a shift from, I'd say, more being a management agency towards more doing a lot of more unique offerings that we can sell to not only just roofers, but other, horizontals as well. Like we can horizontally integrate into HVAC. We can go into, remodeling, and even like restaurants, for example, with some of the stuff that we're doing. And going back to the time thing, it's removing a lot of time from my plate because what I ended up finding out also was that you are the business in a sense. So what I started to do is start to shift the model based around what my strengths and my weaknesses were. So I started hiring out like admin stuff because I'm not the best at organization. Like I've never been that guy. And people at my school used to make fun of me all the time for having a really messy backpack. That was always me. So like I knew that was never my strength. But what my strength was coming up with different systems, different ideas to roll out, basically being creative within the business.
You're a strategist.
Yes, exactly. So what I did is I kind of hired out some of the more basic tasks and I realized like, and this is kind of how I got into the software side of things. I'm really good at the B2B acquisition side of things. I'm good at coming up with different systems. And I would say most importantly, I'm good at finding problems for my prospects. So I ended up just sort of like over the course of weeks, I took a couple of weeks off from sales calls. So this is when we did the 30K a month. Like we actually took off a week and I would say actually really 2 weeks. Like I didn't take any demo calls whatsoever, just solely focused on operation systems, doing research on the back end. And I ended up stumbling across like a couple of different services. I had some people that I was talking to that, I was using some of their services that were good. And I just kind of came to the conclusion of like, I can create very unique offerings by sort of taking services that I know provide value to other people, but are also scalable and create different unique offerings around that. So that's kind of what we're sort of heading towards right now, which is just like finding different ways to use software to not only bolster ads management, but also just solve problems that other agencies aren't solving in the space. So yeah.
That's really cool, man. Would you feel comfortable sharing? Like, I know that at first you were hesitant to tell your parents, like, what ended up happening there?
So I think I have to give my parents a lot of credit. So I think that they were definitely skeptical in the beginning, but I would say with my parents, like ultimately they were just looking out for my best interest. And I don't think it wasn't coming from a place of like, oh, I think you're going to fail. It was like, they just didn't believe in the whole model, if that makes any sense. Like my dad's an economist. He, by nature, like going back to sort of mental frameworks, economists have to have a mindset of being conservative. Like you can't be a risk taker as an economist because then you'll like screw up an entire country's GDP. Not to say that that's what my dad was doing, but because he did a lot of different things.
SMMA is ruining GDPs.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. It's
but
just a joke.
Like you also have, I think one of the things,
anyone's like quoting me later and clipping that out. Anyways.
Well, one of the things that I think I started to understand, and I think you said something very similar to me on a one-on-one call a couple of months later, I kind of looked at it and was like, you have to evaluate people's advice based on their life experiences. Because my dad, like he went to Swarthmore, he went to Harvard Kennedy School for Global Policy, very successful through the academic route, was very successful as a high school student as well, like played the oboe, for example, classic overachiever. And then he went and did stuff in Africa for like 3 or 4 years. So he had a very different type of mindset surrounding what he wanted to do than I did, but he was very successful in his job. Like he was the ambassador for the IMF in Turkey. He was like in different news conferences, stuff like that. And then he ended up being a branch manager there. Now he works for the World Justice Organization, but he was very successful going that route. So when he's giving advice, like he's talking about it from the context of how he achieved success, not how I would potentially achieve success. And me and my dad are very different people.
Yeah. So his advice might be extremely good, but you have to always get clear with, is this the best advice for me? Like I like to reference this mental model, which is, there's a difference between effective advice and optimal advice. So just because something is effective doesn't mean it's optimal for you. And you have to always ask yourself, is this effective advice that kind of just works in general for most people? Or is this the most optimal piece of advice for me, given my situation and what I want to accomplish in life?
Yeah, exactly. And I think my mom, she understood a little bit more, but she was just like, sort of motherly nature, if you want to call it that. Like it's a risk. Like, I think anyone out there who's saying it's not a risk is kidding themselves. It definitely is still a risk. For me, I just never viewed it as a risk because I just looked at myself. I looked at my talents and I was just like, I think that I can do this. Like there was a lot of confidence in it when I did decide to make this decision. I felt like I did have the potential to be good at it, but that I just needed the right place to learn.
So did you tell your parents, I'm not going to college?
Yeah, no, I've already told them already. It was funny because this is after we hit 10K a month. So I came back from the Rise event in Miami. Like 3 days later, my dad takes me out to North Italia for dinner. I'm looking forward to the dinner. I'm thinking, I'm going to eat some good food, like, just have a nice night.
Some pasta.
Nope, that's not what happened. It's 3 hours of talking about why he thinks I should go to college instead. And I kind of had to put my foot down. I was like, Dad, like, first of all, we're seeing, not only just money aside, but like, I'm learning more than I've ever learned in school. I've been more engaged than I've ever been in school because I was actually not a very engaged student whatsoever. Like I got good grades.
You're probably bored.
No, literally. I mean, that was literally it for me. I would never pay attention in class. I would play on my computer the entire time. I was lucky in the sense of like, I was good at studying in a short amount of time before the test where I could get good grades, but I was never engaged in it. I never felt like I had a purpose for doing it. And I just didn't understand, like, why am I learning like history? Like why am I taking an English class when I already speak the language? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, like kind of little things like that. And of course there's going to probably be some people like, oh, like your grammar, stuff like that. Like I've had papers that have literally been graded by one teacher as a 95, graded as a 75 by another teacher. So to me, there's no science to English. Like, and I don't want to get onto English too much, but that's kind of always how I felt about school. I just felt like I was just kind of wasting time but I just didn't know what to spend the time on. So I was kind of, it was very, very interesting.
You are learning. I mean, and it's funny because what is like in marketing, you're copywriting. In sales, it's copywriting, but you're saying the words, right? You have to say the right things to elicit a certain action. So technically you are taking an English class all the time. So
yeah. And also like, I don't sort of want to mention my sort of old school by name and maybe cut this part out a little bit, but
you don't have to.
No, because what I was going to say is basically like going to the school that I went to, like a lot of the teachers there were not very supportive when I would tell them things like this, like, oh, I want to be in entrepreneurship. I had a teacher my freshman year literally tell me that I was going to be a failure for the rest of my life. And the only reason was because I just copied and pasted for like a small annotation homework assignment. And they were like, you're going to be a failure because you're doing this. And I'm like, well, no, that's not true. Like, come on, man. Like,
that's really sad, honestly. It's not even like frustrating. It's just sad.
Yeah. I even had a situation where like, I was in the wrong on this, but like we had a math test, right? And we did the math test. I went through it, but there was like a couple of problems that I was kind of struggling on and they were giving everyone extra time. So I wrote down some of the problems on my arm to solve on my own in the next class that I had. I didn't actually like go and like cheat and like look up the answers to it. I still solved it on my own, still technically out of the test time. So it wasn't allowed, and I of course accept full responsibility for that. But one of my friends, I ended up like kind of telling him about that because I thought I had gotten away with it afterwards. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a good grade on this. Like I'm a genius for doing this. So I told one of my friends and he snitched on me to the school.
Really?
Yeah. So like the culture there, I think for certain types of people, it works really well. For me, I was just not in, I think, the best place for me. But yeah, but ultimately I don't regret it because I wouldn't have the chip on my shoulder.
Yeah, but for someone to literally look, it's like for someone to literally tell you you're going to fail for the rest of your life, like those beliefs can go deep into your subconscious and like, that's really dangerous, And it's like, it's just sad. It's just sad.
I have like another crazy story about it too. Like we had this, so we did this, so this was with one of my friends. And he actually is kind of like what got me into like the whole entrepreneurship world. But so we were at this museum And we had gone through the exhibit. So this was I think it was the African American History Museum, the one that they opened in DC. It was like kind of new at the time. So like everyone was going, it was a big deal. So we did this whole like class field trip there. And I went around with one of my best friends around the exhibit. So basically they wanted us to go through the whole exhibits. I went through not only one time, we went through 3 full times, looked at everything. And if you had quizzed me at the end of it, I would have been able to get 100% of the questions right. 15 minutes before we're supposed to leave, we're sitting on the bench and I'm looking at my phone. Teacher comes up to me. He gives me a green slip, which is just like a demerit, if you want to call it that. They had like the system where like you get detentions based on how many demerit points you had and stuff like that. But then he caught me on that. So like I didn't make much of it at the time. Like it was just like, okay, like, yeah, I got a green slip. Like it's whatever. Next day in class. So this was like a sort of a combination between like history and English. It was a double block. It was a pretty long class. The teacher tries calling me out for being on my phone at the exhibit. He's like making fun of me to the entire class. And I like I'm the type of person where like, I'm actually not very confrontational, but if you like cross a line, like I will be.
You'll stand up for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I talked back to him in the class. I'm like, I don't agree with that at all. I went through the exhibit 3 times and I probably know it better than everyone else in this class, but we had 15 minutes before the time. Like, do you want me to just sit there and stare into empty space? Like, and I said it kind of like that, but I think it was a little bit less confrontational. I ended up being sent to the dean's office for that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've had my fair share of moments in high school. I remember like, I had an A in English class, speaking of English class. And then the teacher was making fun of a student and I got really upset. I was like, I literally said, you're an asshole. Like, I remember standing up for the kid. Cause I was like back in middle school, like I had been bullied a lot. And I was like, it just really triggered me. And I stood up for him. And then we got into like a verbal fight, I guess, not physical. Then I was like, F you, I have an A in your class. I can do whatever I want. And then I left. And then they sent me to the principal's office. It's not good. But, you know, what do you think there's like but I don't know, at the same time, like that's just, you're in a box. Look, like anything else, like there's good teachers, bad teachers, good doctors, bad doctors, good lawyers, bad lawyers, good marketing agencies, bad marketing agencies, good entrepreneurs that do the right thing and want to deliver and be valuable, and bad entrepreneurs that take advantage of people. Like, but do you think that there's a correlation between like not troublemaking in school, but like going against the grain, like pushing back on authority and entrepreneurship?
I've always been this way. Like ever since I've been in school, like I've always been very like, I think, what do they call it? Like people would say like, oh, you just want to rebel to be contrarian. Like that's not how it was to me. Like, it's just like, that was my thoughts. Right. Like, and I'm like, do you want me to just agree with you on everything? No.
Yeah, me too. I was just, it was just questioning things. It wasn't even like disagreeing. It was more like, why?
Yeah. No, I mean, I will say like the school that I went to, you know, lots of successful people come out of it. Right. I just think it wasn't the best fit for me personally. I'm not someone that works well in a system like that where like someone's telling me what to do with my time every second of the day. Cause we were in school until 6 p.m. every day. Like we had mandatory sports, all of this different thing. And it just wasn't a good fit for me.
What do you think would have been a good fit for you?
Well, looking back on it, and this is kind of the interesting thing, right? Like looking back on it, I wouldn't change a thing because I don't think I would be doing this at this point in time if I hadn't gone through those experiences. Cause my senior year, so I went to a different high school my junior year because I was trying to play college athletics at the time. When I came back, people like were kind of mad at me for doing that, in my opinion. No one ever really said this to me, but I just came back. The energy was just so weird. Like I just came back, no one would talk to me at all. So that year, I think really like hit really hard with me. And it was just like, you know, kind of like for a little bit, I kind of went into this mindset of like, fuck these people. I want to just like blow them out the water. I wouldn't say I don't think that way anymore. I think Tony said something about this on like a all hands in call one time where it's like at a certain point, it just doesn't fuel you anymore. But that's definitely what like
the initial drive.
Yeah, for sure. Like it was just like, you know, I just felt like a little bit disrespected, if that makes any sense.
I'm going to challenge you. If you still had to design that perfect school for you, what would that look like?
I think that it would be doing something like what I'm doing now. I've never been someone that works well with like having someone tell me to like adhere to a strict schedule. Like I learn by doing and figuring things out on my own, and then having sort of like coaches, if you want to call them that, to go and ask questions to when I need to. So like when I played soccer, for example, that's kind of how I learned. Like I do a lot of the training on my own, and I got really good.
More self-directed learning.
Yeah, self-directed learning. That's kind of the way I would describe it. Yeah.
Do you feel like, I mean, for me, what was really challenging is I would have to do these things, but I didn't understand why. and it didn't align with what I wanted. Does that resonate? Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Because going back to school, for example, like I basically taught myself the entire curriculum. I didn't pay attention in class at all. But the reason why that's important,
you know what's funny? I've actually had A's in pretty much all of my English classes, and I never read a single book in high school.
Yeah. Because what I was going to say is like, as far as like,
and I don't want to promote, like, look, this is not about promoting bad behavior. It's really not. Like, I think that my message to people is you should take time to explore who you are. You should take time to get clear on what you want. You should always question things, and you should always come up with belief systems that enhance your life, don't take away from it. And also don't just blindly accept what other people are telling you to do because that is what is considered to be normal. It's not about like saying be a rebel. I'm not saying F school or F teachers at all. I'm more so saying quite opposite. You should learn. You should be trying to grow. You should be exploring things. You should be fully committed. You should be showing up and giving it your all, but you should get really clear on what's important to you. And if you're not clear on what's important to you and you don't know what you want, don't be in an environment that's just, it's actually much more vulnerable to be in an environment that's constantly telling you this is who you need to be when you're not sure who you need to be. You know, it's like, because you're much more susceptible to other people's opinions. Yeah. To fill that gap, you know?
Absolutely. Because I think the thing with me, like I kind of knew that I didn't want to
clarify that because like it's not about like being an asshole or pushing back on school or really pushing back on authority. Like this, like sometimes you do need to learn that. Like I went and got a job for 2 years and like followed authority. Like it's not about not doing that. It's more so about also being able to explore what drives you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because also I would say like the school, I did learn things from the school. It just wasn't through the classes. Like I learned a lot about how to deal with, like I would just say difficult people. That's like the way I would describe it. I would always have to send emails out to teachers like last minute. I'd always have to kind of like negotiate with teachers for like deadlines, things like that. And also like, let's say I got in trouble for, you know, like the demerit, like I would have to find ways to diffuse situations as well. So I learned a lot as far as people skills, in my opinion. I would say dealing with more professional type people and in a more formal setting. And I think that really has helped me a lot with my agency because I deal the same way I deal with my clients, I dealt with teachers in school. So I think that there's definitely still, of course, like something that you learn in school. And I agree with you on the sense, like, I wasn't like trying to be a rebel. And like, I don't think you should try to be a rebel and just like say, fuck the system and just like do whatever you want if you don't know what to do. I think that my opinion is just like, you just need to have your own personal opinions, your own personal thoughts, and you just kind of have to stand on maybe certain things that you believe in versus what someone else believes in. So like, that's why I think that I didn't always have the best relationship with the school that I went to, is because I did have my own personal beliefs and I didn't agree with them about a lot of things. And I think that caused a lot of pushback.
I think like a school that would actually say, that's okay and like validate you for it instead of telling you you're going to be a failure for the rest of your life. Like, or even like saying like, hey, this is why we do this, explaining it. And like your opinions are very valid, but given this school, this is still how we operate. I think that's a much more empowering conversation as opposed to like, no, F you, you're going to be a failure for the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say like, I personally wouldn't send my kids there just because I didn't have a good experience. So I just don't want to take that chance. But I think for a lot of kids, it's done really good things for them. And I think, it's just kind of like, which kind of person are you? What are you trying to accomplish?
And that's what's missing. There's no right or wrong. It's like, what's right for you and what's wrong for you.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Cause like my senior year of high school, like when I was looking at like entrepreneurship as a potential route, it was also for me, like I just had this feeling where I felt like if I had gone the traditional route, like I'd just kind of be commoditizing myself, because what happens is like when you go through this traditional route, like everyone's competing for the same internships, you're putting the same stuff on your resume, you're going to the same college, you're taking the same courses as everyone else, so that when you come out, the only thing that differentiates you is your network. And I don't want that to be the factor in determining whether I'm successful or not.
You know what's crazy? Like if you actually wanted to get a job now, like your resume would be insane.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've always thought about that. Like if I wanted to get a job now, like...
I mean, I've had job offers that would make me multiple six figures already, just like 5 months into it. So... No, I totally agree with that. And I just thought like, if I do the same thing as them, I'm going to end up in the same place as them. So I was like, kind of worst case scenario, like let's say I fail for 3 years, but I get to 6 figures by my 4th year. I'm way ahead of everyone else coming out of colleges, and I have actual bankable skills that I can use to always make more money if for some reason something went wrong. Yeah. And also, I mean, I was going to get my college paid for, so that was never really a factor. It was more like a skill development thing.
Yeah, but most people aren't in those shoes. So it's like, generally speaking, it's like,
yeah,
you're not in the red. So where do you go from here? Like, what's your big plan?
I think, I mean, I'm really trying to get into, I would say, more of the software type space. I think that that's something that really intrigues me. Are you developing
your own software?
So it's a little bit tricky. So I think, short answer, yes, but not yet. So what I'm kind of trying to do is like, I'm going to be using other services that, maybe I'm partnering up with someone on it, or, it's something that maybe I have my own creative input to, but it's not entirely mine, because I want to get market research essentially from selling these services so that I can see
these softwares.
Yeah. Cause like what I notice is like kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, the way that I came up with all of my good ideas as far as like new ideas to put in place, strategies to put, it's just talking to people. So I'm selling essentially. So I don't want to develop my own CRM, because I think like when you look at the startup world, why do 90% of startups fail? I think that it's because a lot of them don't have proof of concept. They don't know how to monetize their services. That's my personal opinion.
They don't have product market fit.
Exactly, yeah. And what I wanted to do basically is like, I want to do software. I want to develop my own stuff, but I don't want to just like put all of this money into it and just try to get investors. I want to collect the research from selling, see exactly what people are telling me, what kind of feedback they're giving me. And I'm creating systems around them giving me that feedback so that, 2 years from now, when I do develop my own CRM, I know exactly what features to put in. I know exactly what features to not put in. And I also know how to price it. So it's not like it's taking the sort of risk out of tech.
Wow.
So that's kind of what my long-term vision is. I still want to work with, some of my roofing guys. I love some of the clients that I have. I just don't want to take on, 50 of them. I'd rather just work with 20 people,
and develop the product market fit.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about private equity?
Yeah. So that's like the long-term goal for sure. I want to eventually get into buying businesses and taking equity in them. For me, that's something that I would say is a 20-year plan. Like you
need a lot more capital.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of my intention is like, I want to really get into software, really develop something that I think is cool and, other people like. I want to build something cool. I want to build it with a cool team. I think that's something that's also important to me as well. Cause also it's just like by doing the business, kind of like, coming out to do the podcast with you guys, like it's just cool experiences that happen as an entrepreneur running businesses, like stuff that you'll look back on at the end of your life and be like, damn, like that was pretty cool. I lived a life worth living. And my intention is like, once I get to the point, build up the software business, then maybe eventually sell it. You never know, or just have it running in the background, then get into private equity and then, help other entrepreneurs scale their businesses. And, I would say really take that next level and, potentially own a sports team one day or something like that. You never know.
It seems to me that you've traded traditional learning for real life learning, and that's cool, man.
Pretty much, yeah.
Any final words of wisdom to any teenagers out there?
I would say just like, I think people say like, oh, you should take your time. I heavily disagree with that, actually. I think you should look at what you want to do in the future and have an idea at the very least and start working towards that and coming up with a game plan and working backwards.
Even if you change your mind, at least having some clarity.
Exactly, because I mentioned this earlier. I'd say the number one problem I see my generation have as far as like, achieving success or finding purpose in their life, if you want to call it that, they just don't know what they want. And I think that's a really important part. Like you got to figure out what you want first before you go out and do something.
How do you figure that out?
I think for me, I'm fortunate.
Or how do people figure that out?
I think you just have to look at yourself, look at like what you've liked doing in the past. I think it's going to look different for each and every person. What maybe brings me fulfillment isn't going to bring someone else fulfillment. Going back to my dad, like my dad doesn't care about money at all. Doesn't care. He can make a lot more money than he is right now. Doesn't care at all. Like that's not his purpose. He doesn't get fulfillment from making money. He gets fulfillment from doing something that's worthwhile for him. Almost had a horrible grammar error there, but point being, I think it's just like you kind of have to look at yourself and just be honest with yourself. I think that's the most important thing.
Most people just don't spend enough time even evaluating it. I feel like that's the 80-20. Like most people just are like, oh shit, I'm graduating. What do I do? It's like you just started thinking about it.
Like, for example, like at the high school that I went to, everyone's getting into finance. Like, why are you getting into finance? Like, do you understand what that entails? Like, it's just like they see Wolf of Wall Street and they want to make a lot of money. And I see a lot of people in the entrepreneur space like that. They just kind of get in, want to make a quick buck and leave. if you come in with that mindset, you will fail in this space, in my opinion, because this is not like something where you're going to make quick money. Like you have to put hours and hours and hours before you even see your first dollar, let alone, you know, the significant sums that people are anticipating when they get into something like this. So I think people have to be honest with themselves and ask them, like, is money something really that drives them? For me, I would say it definitely does to an extent. I think that more stems back from my experience in high school.
It also sounds like you like the sport of business.
Yeah. And that's really what it is for me now. So I had I would say almost like a sort of purpose crisis a couple of weeks back, where like for a couple of days, I just didn't know why I was getting up and working. I think Tony said something very similar as well. And for me, it was just like, I love playing the game. Like, I don't care about making money. Like, I mean, the clothes that I'm wearing now probably cost a total of like $80. I have pretty decently nice shoes, but I got those over a year ago. They weren't paid for by me, but the only things I spend money on now is like food. That's it. So for me, it was never about like, oh, I want to buy a nice car. It's like, I want the money to, it's like kind of like a way of keeping score for me.
Score, yeah. I'm with you, man. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be here.